Cool. How's everybody doing today? Coffee plus banana? Yeah. What does the sauna do? Google. Slow Friday, yep. What position do you play? CB. And let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Cool. So if I recall correctly, I believe I brought this up on Tuesday, and that I believe was it the was it the weekly? I don't recall correctly. I know I highlighted the entire general area, and I had highlighted, I forgot what time frame that POI was on. I believe it was it 8-hour daily? Well, basically, right, we highlighted this POI on, I don't know if I did this on Zoom or after Zoom. Let me see. So yeah, okay, H4. That's pretty much where this is from. All right, so H4, we had pretty much noted this on Tuesday, if I recall correctly. And we were approaching it at the time of the Zoom, I believe. I did it around 10-11. Yeah, we were basically approaching it. But as we always talk about in terms of different structural levels in confluence, right? We know our directional from a major intraday to a swing is technically bearish based on the leg present. But we know that internally, in order to reach the POI, we are bullish internally. And by that, I mean low, high. So even if we get a reaction from the POI, we know that we are still bullish in terms of an intermediate and internal perspective. So acknowledging that, right, we can start zooming in. So it only makes sense as to why, after the reaction from the POI, right, you could say that's here, right, order flow continuations into the downside is only promoting a pullback because our intermediate direction is bullish. So it only makes sense as to why this is only a pullback. And then you see an internal transition, right, in the form of an internal liquidity grab, which is what pretty much is giving you that final push up into the upside, right? And our unwillingness is technically here as soon as we take out this red line, right? And that's from a major intraday perspective. Honestly, I am betting on more downside movement, and that is because although we did come and snatch liquidity from our previous high, which is reacting from the POI that we had mentioned, right? Like we said, we know that we have to be bullish internally, so we could start zooming in here. So I know, right, from solidified point perspective, as soon as we break this, right, this is now a solidified low, and that solidified low comes to take out a previous high, right? However, right, internally, right, I know that this is unwillingness from a scalp time frame, right? So from a scalp time frame, this is unwillingness and a bearish break of structure, but internally, this is still a minor intraday bullish. So we know that in order, right, to see a shift or a change, we need to see something here, right? And as you can see, we see, right, a potential willingness to go higher. One push, right? But that does not break structure, so it's not a solidified low yet. So then we have internal bearish structure, right, up until unwillingness. This solidifies the low and gives us a bullish reaction. So as soon as that fails, right, we've already seen, right, oh, actually, let me do this instead. We've already seen a willingness to push higher. So once this is taken out, right, I am honestly bearish. Meaning that whatever happens here, I am bearish. And it does make sense to me as to why we should be targeting relative equal lows due to the failed reaction present here. So, right, I know from an intraday perspective, I do want, you know, that small push into the downside, but the momentum coming up is still very strong. So when I'm trying to see how we will close for the week, it's a bit uncertain. Although you guys know that I still do want to be bearish, I'm sorry, in terms of a longer term perspective, right? And we had brought up the consideration that this POI, this general area, is very, very important in terms of determining whether we're going to aim for lows or for highs. So as of now, still a bit uncertain, but I do want to favor that downside, especially because of the failed reaction that we saw. I believe this was last night. Yeah, basically last night, this morning. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens in this general area. So who knows, maybe we might even see a full inefficiency be tapped and actually see, you know, the full on reaction be given there. So who knows, we'll see. And that brings us to EURUSD. This one is interesting because our range has not been solidified yet, right? Although this one we are also technically bearish on. I'm more bearish on this than I am bearish on this, for the simple fact that we already have a narrative dictated here, a narrative being given to us here, right? And by that I mean the narrative of the liquidity grab, which came into a potential previous turbulence point. Where did this react from? You can see wick here, but that's pretty irrelevant now. All I care for more is what is happening in terms of a liquidity perspective, order flow perspective. So I know that we have an internal liquidity grab, but right from a perspective of major intraday, let me write high to low, high to low, high to low, high to low to high. We have not solidified the range yet. So if I were to bet on it, we would probably see this be taken out. Unsubstantial new low, right? We haven't seen a substantial new low in comparison to low, low, and low, right? You see the distance, whereas this is not as convincing as, let's say, this. So I would more so like to see this be taken out and solidify the range so that we can come back into a potential premium and see what happens, whether we're going to get reaccumulation or if we're going to get a transition into the downside. Who knows? Okay, cool. So once I'm diving in internally, right, this has been a mess, and I know that you guys caught some nice trades here. I believe Tomas showed you guys the intraday move down here. I saw it on Discord, but right, is very, very choppy, and by that I mean a ton of wicks, right, a ton of efficient price action, not too much momentum in terms of something like this, right? Everything seems very efficient, so I don't really see, right, a willingness for this to continue lower, unless we get a full-on bearish transition and we get actual momentum. But when I'm studying this internally right now from a M15 perspective, M5 perspective, right, I am acknowledging POIs, right? I'm noting this because it makes sense from the perspective of order flow, and as you can see, the character changes here. This is where the momentum comes into play. The momentum changes there, character changes there. So there is a POI here, and there is a confirmed reaction. Confirmed reaction led to unwillingness in terms of a minor intraday trade perspective. It did not create a new low, but from a scalp perspective, it did create new lows. So there is a reaction present, which was inevitably taken out, right? So although it is very choppy, right, this is our breaking point here currently. Our breaking point because, one, we have an order flow disruption, we have the preliminary range being taken out, right, and we have an internal liquidity grab present as well here, right? Internal liquidity grab present, right? And you guys can see that here. Right? So even if that isn't taken out, there is still the preliminary range to be taken out. So I am more so favoring a potential bullish move, right? But it's Friday. It's about to be 11. Where we got what 4 or 5 hours until market closure for the week, and there's really not enough time to see whether we're going to take this out or if we're going to react and continue lower. Just because also, even though I'm acknowledging that bearish liquidity grab, right, internally, you could also argue, let me turn this on. Excuse me. Right, you could also argue, right, that there is a bearish liquidity grab in play, and that is why this here is very, very crucial. Right? So this is honestly getting very, very interesting just because we have compressed, right? So it's only a matter of time seeing which way we're going to pop off, whether it's up or down. But I'm really open to both sides, especially because, like I said, we have kind of overextended a bit after such a big move, right? Which is, you know, we could see realistically what we saw in AU this week, we can see in EU next week. And by that I mean you see the solidified range be made, right? But we know that there is a bearish narrative in play, right? So pretty much we're here in EU where you see, right, the pullback become, you know, initiate, and then you see a conversion or a reason, right, to have that bearish narrative continue, right? But although this is actually a daily inefficiency, but internally this is an H1 inefficiency. But I'll come back to that. But we could easily see something like this next week, right? And by that I mean we come back up here and we continue lower, you know. But yeah, that'll pretty much move us on to AU. Right, and with AU, right, as we just mentioned with EU, where we could see the solidified range just come into play, that's exactly what AU did this week, where we took out preliminary structure, but the narrative, right, was in play, right? The narrative was already in play, right? So although we have the preliminary range be taken, right, we know that this is required for a bullish pullback, right, to then favor a bearish narrative continuation to the downside, right? But we know that internally this has to be bullish, right? But unfortunately, I believe there wasn't anything on smaller time frames. I was looking at this last night, and it really didn't give us anything internally unless you were being very conservative. Because in terms of, right, obviously in hindsight terms, we could easily say continuation BOS, but we know that we're still bullish, right? So it's a bit hard to justify trying to catch the reversal here unless you're trying to be, you know, trying to use intuition and using low momentum in play with reference to not only the POI that is present, and by that I mean this POI, where is it? Wrong time frame. Oh, right here. Okay. POI present there, and internally right, I didn't even reach that, I believe. No, but either way, this would have been extremely aggressive if you would have taken from a daily perspective, and if you wanted to assume that that would have been the high, right, that would have been a very, very nice move. But in terms of aggressiveness, they're very, very aggressive. But the narrative was still already in play, so I care more so here that I got the direction right, because it really looks like next week we can really start to dive lower, and we could even start aiming for these previous lows, right? And especially from an order flow perspective, right? We see candle of interest, then we see the wick of interest that mitigates that, right? We see that there is a present reaction. So if we were to take this POI out, that's order flow disruption. So we know that we can actually start diving even more deeper down. On the daily, there isn't a BOS on AU. What are you talking about? To look for a sell there. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's extremely aggressive. That's why I'm saying that. And that's why I'm pointing that out in hindsight terms. Right? We know that this has to be bullish to give a pullback, right? So like I said, there wasn't really a true convincing transition unless you would have, you know, assumed the high and tried to use momentum in your favor, but it would have been extremely aggressive. That's what I'm trying to point out. So now, I mean, it doesn't, I doubt we'll get back up here, right? For me, honestly, it makes more sense to just see liquidity be cleared and continue lower. But yeah, this has been smooth, very, very smooth, right? Because our position technically is still up. $100 pips, yeah, ish. But yeah, we are aiming, right? We are aiming for order flow disruption, right? I would love to see this just melt, honestly, just melt and then give us another opportunity and then melt again. Would love to see that. But yeah, I mean, very, very choppy week, right? But that usually means that a big move is incoming. So I'm, you know, not really too worried. Cool. Does anybody have any case studies they want to show? Anything they want to show the group? I'll show markup. Cool. Share screen. Go ahead. Let me change the settings. There you go. Oh, there we go. Nice, very crisp. Let's see.
My bad. I didn't realize I was muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Yeah, I was one study that I was I actually didn't execute this trade. Probably could be beneficial for people, but it was GBPJPY that I was looking at, and on this pair here, I was looking at the structure. I know that the overall range was bullish. We broke this, solidifying this range. We pulled back. Or I'm sorry, broke this, we pulled back, and then we solidified this low, and we gave a huge reaction to the downside. And this right here let me know that our structure range was bearish once we took this.
Yeah, and what is that called?
Preliminary structure break.
I'm sorry?
Preliminary structure break.
No. The your initial blue range, what is that called? Read the chat.
Let's see. SD. I don't know why I'm probably overthinking.
Structural disruption, bro. Structural disruption.
Oh yeah.
So that pretty much, that literally gives you the exact direction it's gonna go because it's a failed reaction. But yeah, continue.
And so then we can see the order flow present. Here, this mitigation, then price comes up to this candle of interest here. And when price comes to this POI, I was looking for, see that overall our leg was bullish. We had this break right here. So this was a break. And then I was looking at, I knew my overall direction was bearish. I was trying to find a way to get in here. And so price, let this play out for a quick second. Price came back. And I knew I wanted to get into higher inefficiency fill or this wick here. And price came and it returned back to that area. So I actually had an alert set where this inefficiency fill was. So I had an alert set there, and then we see that price comes and taps that completely, and that would have been a nice trade right there. Obviously, being very conservative, this would have been like a 10 pip if you weren't confident about putting your stop above this unmitigated wick. But that could have been a 5 pip, which is not that bad when you see the GJ moves pretty fast, understanding you're targeting this overall low, and this was all based off of higher time frame narrative. So that was my overall target. And so obviously that played out. And then another trade that was the same exact thing with EURJPY, which another structural disruption. Again, if we're counting this right here, this getting broke, solidifying this low. So then once price took that, that showed its hand, preliminary structure break, structure range, came to point of interest. And this one actually wasn't something that I caught, and I was kind of mad about it because I couldn't justify an entry. So once we came to our POI, I had the break and I wanted something in this general area, inefficiency fill, 50%, something like that. And as price develops, you're going to see that price never actually came. I wasn't confident enough trying to take a trade when price came. It's attempting to get its move to the upside, and then we just tumble. And so this right here, I don't know why this is reacting, probably 50% efficiency of this right here, and I couldn't justify a trade there, and price never gave me an entry really to get in.
Go to M15 on there. M10.
What was that?
M10. Okay, yeah, that's super annoying. Yeah, I see what you mean though.
So that was pretty, I didn't want to, and that was just another thing I think that was talked about in the chat earlier, is just being able to execute your trade is important as well. So I missed out on that. And then
But that's fine because it didn't meet your criteria.
Exactly.
Rather miss a trade than lose a trade.
And I knew obviously this trade was derived from higher time frame.
Same thing. Yep.
Came up, reacted to this wick or something on a different time frame, and structure shifted. Then another trade I was looking at was we had EURGBP, daily bearish structure leg, liquidity grab to new lower low. Then looking at this, our range is solidified, preliminary structure break, and looking for a potential point of interest. This black line represents this wick right here. Took out liquidity. And so price came into that, but trying to justify a move inside of that is kind of just a bit challenging a little bit. You could probably justify taking a move here maybe, with this being our leg. Attempting to go higher, so this would be unwillingness. Unwillingness with an internal break. So this is not a full leg take, but I guess so. I didn't really take that, and that's just something I was looking at. And then so that's EURGBP. And then another pair. I'm sorry, I'm running through all these pairs with AU.
No, you're good.
My perspective was we had our daily bearish leg, and I was a bit conflicted with this because I wanted 50% of this or a reaction to this candle or something. And this was actually like a H. I know that you use the 3-day for your just your whole overall POI. And I was trying to just be a little bit more precise with exact reaction, but we had an inefficiency fill, which caused that reaction. But I know that our pullback phase isn't officially over yet because obviously you can see structure
It's still.
bullish in here. And this low is solidified, so I would want this low to be taken out and then give us some type of pullback within these range. But I'm just kind of sitting. This was the unwillingness, and so I know internally, if we're playing it from the perspective of this was unwillingness, we had minor intraday structure took, and you're wanting to see, and you're wanting to take a sell or short here. I have this noted as like a turbulence point. And so if price were to give a pullback, because this would be like our range here, playing minor intraday, give a pullback, we can react from like a turbulence point or even this look right here. And so that's like my perspective on AU. And then lastly, EU. I know daily we are bearish. Looking at this was a bit messy, a bit choppy, trying to catch the moves within it, probably playing scalp legs, but we have this range still intact right now. And it's just a bit conflicting, like you said, with the DXY trying to correlate whether or not this push, this daily leg here that gave the pullback is going to take out these equal highs, or if this structure range here is going to push lower, transitioning. If this does sell off, thinking that potentially we could create this impulse on this leg with this the low pullback, break of this little counter trend, and then now we would be playing it within this leg here.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. I mean, I think that's definitely what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and then
that would be what I argue, unless we get that what we talked about with the daily. I think H4, if that POI breaks, then rip, you know. But
and I think like just one thing for me, just like a psychology thing, like that was kind of just frustrating, but just understanding it's okay. It's just this EJ trade obviously was a crazy. If you were able to find an entry like this, drop for 300 plus pips, and so I seen the potential in it, so that's why it was a little bit just frustrating not getting into it. And then this kind of threw me off here when we were at this phase here, when we took this preliminary structure. And I'm thinking, okay, we solidify this range, and then we're going to pull back deeper, an efficiency or something, turbulence, whatever. And then price internally just goes back the opposite way. And then
you can't really assume that though, because look, a lot of the time you'll see this and I'll correlate this. You don't have to do anything. For example, if we are bullish, right, and we then obviously have, right, the structural disruption or anything like that, you'll usually get a very decent pullback, and then from there it'll usually be continuations until until the impulse is then fully completed, right? And I mean, you could derive that even from a Wyckoff perspective. Look up any schematic, any of the original schematics, please.
See.
Just look up like accumulation schematic.
I don't know why it's screenshotting. What is it doing right now?
Right, where you won't really see the deep pullback after the transition has occurred. Right, and I mean, I'm referencing stuff like this. You'll usually see the continuation after the transition has been met. Right, obviously I'm really picking at this. Like it's obviously never as clean as this. But usually after the transition, you don't see the full recovery. I mean, AU is a perfect example of what we were talking about.
Yeah, and I get what you mean, because after the structural disruption,
after the transition, you get the deep pullback and then the continuation.
It just never gave an entry. And I mean, obviously, if you're playing with the standpoint of playing this at this phase in the market, now like your internal structure is kind of lining up, but you would be having to play the scalp ranges, I guess, to get in on that continuation,
and that can be problematic too. Because obviously you don't know when the impulse is going to end, right? Like for example, I noted. Let me share screen real quick. I'll give it back to you in a bit, but let me just show you something. Right, with AU, right, it can be problematic to look for the continuations, especially after you've overextended, or especially after the impulse, right? For example, like we had mentioned, the order flow continuation, although that is a good move, you have to understand not only what you're trading, how you're trading it, when you're trading it, but where you are trading it. For example, here, this is obviously a great move, 40 pips, right? But it's not sustainable over time because technically you're trading at a discount of a range that's not even been solidified yet, right? So once the range is solidified, you can't say, oh, you're bullish now. You have to acknowledge that, oh, there's a pullback in place, right? So it's also about where. Okay, yeah, so you can go back to that EJ trade, and could you go to like the M15? Right, so this is unfortunate just because you didn't get any type of pullback, and ideally, in my opinion, if you're trying to play continuations, I would only focus on intraday, not really scalp, unless you're a scalper and you want that quick 1.5, 1.8 R. But unfortunately, right here, right, you see that there is literally, oh, hold on. There's literally no pullback. So you just have to acknowledge that it happens. At the end of the day, we don't know how the market moves. We can't say that we can move the market. We can't say anything like that. So we just play to our strengths, and that's models and specificity.
Yeah, I think makes sense. I think this actually happened. Something like this, I think, might have occurred on GJ. And I normally don't trade these pairs, and that was just another psychology thing that I went through, just because the dollar is just being so, obviously, with Euro USD, this price
So dumb.
disgusting. So like had me venturing off looking at other pairs, and I think it was, let's see where we were at. Oh,
you know, trading those yens in Asia session is actually low-key slept on.
And that's why I did it. That's actually kind of why I added, besides the dollar, is just like if I catch a move on a yen pair during Asian, I don't gotta wake up in the morning for New York, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I seen this. So range, this didn't give me a significant low, but then we solidified our range here. So if we solidify this, then I was thinking at this point in time, I had, okay, we broke that prelim. This is my range. I'm going to get a discount. And then I had like turbulence point here that we could react to. But after we did that, we reacted to something in here, I believe.
I would just acknowledge the whole turbulence point.
Oh yeah, yep. And like in my head, I knew that this was a turbulence point. So I'm like, I wonder if we could potentially, after we solidify a range, if we could just react right to that turbulence point, something in there, because I actually had this POI noted out, and I just wanted something deeper. I wanted like something here or whatever, and that's just something I miss. So I mean, lesson for the week is just still just stay true to the model. Like make sure you have your model in place, because I mean that can result in losses trying to chase that trade, especially with like EJ. That one was so super annoying. And I actually have one more last one. It was on USD CAD. I was looking at that too. From the standpoint of, where was this at? So the standpoint of, at this point in time, I knew that we were very low in price, so I didn't really want to just be selling. I knew that we had this overall leg, this solidified the range. So we had this here. And then I knew we had a BOS here. I knew that we had this here. I knew that we had this here. Then we had prelim break, 1 hour time frame or whatever. And long story short, I'm like, all right, okay, the pullback is occurring of this entire range, so maybe we're going to get a premium to potentially go lower or whatever. And so I knew that we were in the counter trend phase, and then we had this here, which before this huge move to the upside wasn't really a huge move, but you could have called pips. We had this unmitigated wick, or this candle here. So we had this as a POI, and that was a POI looking at the 30-minute potential SC or something, whatever in there. And I knew that my range here was bad. We had this high. I was using this low. Hold up.
Yeah, continuation BOS on momentum.
And then when we got into that POI, this was, price came into that POI, and then it gave such a clear, easy entry. We had literally the BOS. So we had this
Confirm liquidity grab, yeah.
Obviously bearish. Then we had this BOS here. Solidifies this low. Then we left inefficiency left over. Measure that out. We have this here that you could have played. Invalidation point at this wick low. And then obviously we see price literally give you like a 1 to 20 type move.
I think it's important to note there, not the continuation BOS, but the liquidity grab. That's what, in my opinion, gives validity.
Wait, where's the liquidity grab that you're
Go back to M1.
Oh, this.
I think that's what matters more.
Okay, yeah. And see, for me, this was like pretty clear.
Yeah, because a lot of the time, I will notice people only focus on this. Right? They look for the continuation BOS, and then they look for that instead of where this is actually a model, right? Where it's actually a liquidity grab model back into a discount, which then gives an expansion to the upside.
Yeah, and I literally was like, I don't know what I was doing. I had my entry or alert set, and I just wasn't watching the charts, and it was just annoying because obviously I was aiming for this high up here. Being conservative, you could have aimed. I mean, looking at the RR, that's a 1 to 16, so you could have had an alert set.
Yeah, in 20 minutes.
Right, within 20 minutes, and then this gave you a potential of like a 1 to 20 within half an hour, and ultimately we failed to continue that counter trend, and we did something like this and took this out, and now we're within this range. So that's all I have for my case studies as far as just looking at price. So really the yen pairs were the ones that were pretty attractive this week, and so we should get something pretty interesting on the dollar.
Definitely.
Sweet. So that's it.
Appreciate that. Let's see. Let me actually check something out, because this actually bounced off of what's his name? Giovanni was on this. He was on this trade, right? And it looks like it actually broke him even both sides. So I believe because I think he had shown that he was in from POI number 1, POI number 2. I believe this is what he was in. So he had broken even immediately after his reaction, which I disagree with. I like to break even until the preliminary scalp range is taken. So technically I wouldn't have been broken even until this, which would have been after this. I don't know if he's on the call. Is he on the call? No, Giovanni's not on the call. But yeah, this is interesting too. I wonder where this is gonna go. And yeah, you can see this is bouncing off right now. That's annoying or weird. Right, so now let's see what the breaking point will do here. So you see that reaction has already occurred. This one, yeah, I'm done for the week. Does anybody want to talk about something, bring something up, case studies, whatever. Oh, oops, don't have the chat open, my bad. A lot of good info today, yeah. I think it's a lot more beneficial to do these once a week than do these twice a week. But yeah, appreciate the case studies, Dom. And unless anybody else has any more questions, we could just end it off here. You know, Trey, you need to watch last week's Zoom, bro. Yeah, man, you guys have a great weekend. I'll talk to you guys soon.